Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jack Frenchuli for Wahoo's 24/7, and we're going to talk about the NC State loss in this episode, but also look ahead to the Virginia game against Boston College. But before we get going, I want you to go ahead and like this video, like our channel on YouTube, and click on the bell so you're notified whenever there's a new video. And if you're listening this or on whatever podcast platform you have, why don't you go ahead and review and rate us on Spotify and Apple. That way we can continue to grow the show and also Wahoo's 24/7. We've had tremendous growth over the course of the last year. So I really appreciate all of you that have tuned in, signed up for a subscription, and have participated in everything that we've done. So I really, really appreciate the support. So, and also before we get going too, as you notice, this has been posted on Tuesday. I am trying to see what the best course of action is when it comes to scheduling. A lot of you know that I am a mom. My daughter was sick when I got home on Friday night after the NC State game. So on my weekend, I spent my time with her, so I couldn't rewatch the game to do a game recap episode on Monday. So I only rewatched the game on Monday night. So obviously, I couldn't get a podcast together until today on Tuesday, and I couldn't get it done until after Tony Elliott's press conference because I had to be at Virginia by 11 for post-practice interviews. So with timing, it's been a little hard to get these episodes up on Monday. As you know, Michael Kieran is a student intern and he's busy with classes. So I'm basically the one who's in charge of this every week. So it's been a little hard to do it on Mondays. So I might move this permanently on Tuesdays and do Thursdays for behind enemy lines and just get a deeper look into the opponent. So that could be what we do moving forward, is logistically it's a little easier, especially with Boston College. I will be in Boston College this week for the games. I'll be traveling back on Sunday. So again, I probably won't get to rewatch the game until Monday, which means I won't be able to do a game recap until then either. So again, it probably makes more sense to do these Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then as basketball season comes closer and we'll be covering from Basketball Media Day, we actually will be talking to the women's basketball team on Wednesday as well. We will probably adjust our schedule again to have one day dedicated to basketball week and one dedicated to football. So, and then there's also recruiting that's coming up early Sunday. So we're trying to see what way it works without me missing something and the ability to record as well. So I just wanted to get that out there about the scheduling. So right now we'll just move to Tuesday and Thursdays is what I'm going for next week for football. And then we'll kind of adjust as basketball season comes closer, where we'll be talking more about basketball. And honestly, basketball recruiting is picking up here now with the staff with staff meeting guys. You know, they're trying to secure a couple of commitments. So I could see us do a couple more basketball recruiting stuff as well. So again, Tuesday and Thursdays for right now for football. Tuesdays will be your game recap, post Tony Elliott press conference. And then Thursday will be your look ahead to the game. That's where I think we're headed to right now, just logistically with how things are going. Now we'll see how this works this week. So let's start off with a couple of breaking news from Tony Elliott's press conference. I think the big news from the press conference, obviously, is that Tony Muskett will be your starter against Boston College. Now, remember, Muskett got hurt against Tennessee. He hurt his shoulder. He's been out for a couple of weeks. Anthony Colandrea has stepped up and has been doing very well. Showed his moxie, shows his ability to be electric, shows that the moment is not too big for him. You've seen growth from him. He's, obviously has turned over the ball. So that is something that, he's done. He is still doing some rookie mistakes that you expect a true freshman to do. But you obviously see the talent that you have with an Anthony Colandrea quarterback. So you can see what the offense will look like in the future for Virginia. Again, Anthony Colandrea showed improvement from the Maryland game to the NC State game, because in the Maryland game, he let one pick go to 2 picks, go to 3 picks, and the fumble. In the game against NC State, he had that 1 pick, went to 2 picks, but then he responded in that crucial touchdown drive, which got the 2-point conversion. He learned to respond. Kudos to Des Kitchings. He gave Colandrea a couple of QB runs just to get him back in the groove, gain some momentum, gain a little bit more confidence, and that also helped as well. So, but at the end of the day, Tony Muskett is going to be your starter. I understand why Tony Elliott is putting Tony Muskett under center. He was the guy that won the battle after fall camp. After fall camp, Tony Muskett was the guy. He played against Tennessee. I will not judge Tony Muskett on the Tennessee game. That was only 45 snaps for him, and I was against an opponent that they were outmatched with. I mean, I was going to be one of the best defensive lines against the Vols. I mean, the defensive line for the Vols is probably going to be one of the best defensive lines that Virginia faces all year. So, and then the O-line was still not as, I mean, the O-line is still struggling, but it's getting better every week. That was the first game. Virginia has made adjustments on the O-line with Brian Stevens at center. And, we've seen how much more improved the O-line is with some of the adjustments they made. Tony Muskett still hasn't played after those adjustments were made. So again, we're going to see how that looks this week. And again, totally understand why Tony Muskett is going to be under center. In this portal world, Tony Muskett getting a chance at starting also helps you there. In my opinion, if Tony Muskett loses his job into an injury when you're winless, although I like I said, Anthony Colandrea has a lot of hope in the future. I mean, Anthony Colandrea is a ball player. He's really, really good. He was a great evaluation by the staff. But if UVA wants a chance at getting guys from the portal in the future, you also play Tony Muskett. Sometimes you also have to play politics. But again, Tony Muskett won the battle after fall camp too. And we only have Tennessee film to really judge him on. There's a reason why he won the fall camp competition too. Anthony Colandrea pushed him. Let's give, like Tony Elliott said, let's give him the game day evaluation too. So, I've talked to a few people about this too on the beat, and just generally talking about a 2-quarterback system. And Tony Elliott was asked about that. It's not the only big news coming from Tony Elliott's press conference. No, Virginia obviously is traveling to Boston College this week. So we were looking at the depth chart to see if there's any changes. Sometimes the depth chart does reveal some changes. Sometimes you don't see those changes until game day. I mean, Brian Stevens was not listed at center right before the Maryland game, but he was at center. Then Lex Long, who did not play last week, was not expected to play, as we reported, as Tony Elliott even said in his press conference, but he was still on the depth chart. So I would say this is kind of like a guideline of what to expect. But there is some noticeable differences. Obviously, on the offense, you notice that Jimmy Christ does make an appearance on the depth chart for the first time since his injury. He is behind Ugonna Nana at right tackle. Ty Furnish is still at right guard, and Brian Stevens is still at center. There's no more or between Kobe Pace and Mike Hollins. So those are kind of the clear differences on the offense. And again, this is all available on Wahoo's 24/7. I go position by position so you can see the changes on the depth chart. So that is something that's easy for you to access. Now, on the O-line, I'm interested to see moving forward if that's what the O-line looks. So right now, from left to right, you have Mikhail Boley, Noah Josie, who's having a really quiet season. Noah Josie's doing a good job. Then Brian Stevens, Ty Furnish, and then Ugonna Nana. Ugonna Nana has moved to tackle. He was playing guard mostly heading into fall camp. And then they moved him to tackle after all the injuries and trying to adjust. I'm curious myself if they move with Jimmy Christ, his conditioning getting better. I'm curious to see if they move Jimmy Christ to right tackle and Ugonna Nana to right guard. That is my curiosity piqued for this week, and if that's something that they can do moving forward. So that is the offensive side on the depth chart. On the defense, this is where the big news is. Cam Butler is not playing against Boston College. That is a huge loss for this UVA defense. A UVA defense that's been hurt by so many injuries. I know a lot of people are saying, well, this defense should have been better by now, but I mean, look who's not playing. This defensive line was meant to be the strength of this team. Chico Bennett is still not 100%. He's getting there. Every week he is better. I mean, it's just unlucky that he got that freak injury in the fall camp. So you had Chico Bennett working back to fitness. You have Sue Agunloe, who is now out for the season. So your depth inside is also taking a hit. And then you have Cam Butler, who they're still waiting for an MRI to see how long he's going to be out. They think it's a pec injury. They're hoping it's a pec injury rather than a shoulder injury. Then you have Paul Akiri, who's also not going to be available, another edge guy. So Paul Akiri is not expecting to play. So that means Mekhi Buchanan is going to be the guy who comes in at number 2 behind Chico Bennett. Then Bryce Carter is going to be starting at defensive end for Cam Butler. And then Ben Smiley will be the guy behind him, but he's going through concussion protocol. They're hoping that Ben Smiley will be ready to go for this week. Again, a lot of injuries. You're also relying on Jason Hammond to come in at nose tackle behind Jameer Carter after all the injuries that they're facing. Now at linebacker, Josh Ahern is questionable for the game. So you're probably expecting that Cam Robinson, the true freshman who led the team in tackles last week, to start. And honestly, on the depth chart, it says Josh Ahern or Cam Robinson. I honestly think Cam Robinson's earned the starting position from his play last week. But again, that's something that to look out for. Another injury. And then, man, you just look at that secondary. A lot of movement on the depth chart. You have Cohen King, the steady force back there. Jonas Sanker, the steady force at safety. But then Malcolm Green at right corner, or Dre Walker, the true freshman, who also did a good job against NC State, had a really nice pass breakup in the end zone. He's having a really good day. He's someone that I've hyped up a lot preseason. You know, I was on that lockdown podcast with Tony and Ahmad and Brad and Chris, and we talked about some of the preseason hype, and I chose Dre Walker as one of the guys to look out for this year as a possible breakout guy. And I mean, you're seeing why I was confident that he was going to be one of the freshmen to watch. And I think we see him more and more as the season goes on. Fun fact, he is roommates with Cam Robinson. And moving forward, you see that Sam Westfall on the depth chart is now behind Cohen King. So a lot of movement at corner, while at safety, because Antonio Clary is out, Lex Long is also expected to be out with a foot injury this week. So now you have Landon Danley, a true freshman, also on the depth chart. I expect Caleb Hardy is another guy to watch out for there as well. Micah Gaffney obviously did a good job against NC State. So again, a lot of moving pieces in that secondary. It's been quite the journey for this Virginia defense. They went in thinking they'd had a few pieces they need to worry about, but they were going to be anchored by a veteran defensive line, and that experience just evaporated with injuries. And even at linebacker, they thought they had enough depth when they come into the season. They thought Lex Long would be their versatile guy in the secondary and the linebacker, and then that evaporated. And then in the secondary, they thought they had enough bodies back there, and again, injuries happened, and now they're trying to adjust with the bodies that they have. Again, it's been, with William Simpkins down, Donovan Johnson down. So again, it's been a different tale for this defense this year, but a lot of freshmen, a lot of young talent getting necessary reps for the future, like I said early on about the offense. So those are the key stories heading into the game against Boston College. We're going to take a quick break, and then on the way back, we'll recap the game against NC State, looking at some things that stood out, some of our big takeaways, and just what we want to see as Virginia takes on Boston College. So we'll be right back for the second half of our show. And welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jack Frenchuli for Wahoo's 24/7. And on your screen, you're going to have the full stats that is available from the NC State loss. Just like 3, 2, 1. And welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jack Frenchuli for Wahoo's 24/7. And just like in other weeks, we have the stats available to you if you're watching this on YouTube. And then obviously those stats are also available on Wahoo's 24/7 as well. So let's get to it, to our game recap. So obviously Virginia, it was a heartbreaker for UVA. They lost to NC State 24-21 on a last second field goal. The game was really about that last minute. It was gut wrenching to see how Virginia lost the game, because this game was not about NC State winning. It was about UVA losing. At the end of the day, it's been the same story, but different day for UVA. They found a way to lose the game. So in the end, after getting the 2-point conversion, you had, well, first of all, leading up to the 2-point conversion, I mean, Anthony Colandrea was able to get the 6 points. And then they needed a 2-point conversion to tie the game. Then Ty Furnish was called for an unsportsmanlike penalty for a headbutt. I mean, to be fair, Ty Furnish was lucky that he didn't get called for another unsportsmanlike conduct earlier in the game. So then that happened. So they were pushed back by 18 yards. They converted the 2-point conversion with Colandrea hitting Malachi Fields in the end zone. And then they called by another 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty with Anthony Colandrea's helmet coming off. That one, I mean, out of all the penalties, that one is not the one that bothers me the most, because he just literally took off his penalty. That the penalty was about him taking off his helmet. When it was coming off, he lifted it up more completely. It was not about the celebration afterwards. I had assumed it was about the celebration, not about the helmet. But the ACC told Greg Medea from the Daily Progress that it was about him taking off the helmet. So, I mean, the helmet was coming off. If he had just, I think, taken off the helmet and not done the celebration, I don't think he would have got that penalty, in my opinion. Obviously, the ACC is saying it's for the helmet, not the celebration. But I just think if he didn't celebrate it, he wouldn't have done. Again, it's a true freshman. He's enjoying. I mean, he just hit a 2-point conversion. I mean, I think I can forgive him for that. But then what we can't forgive, well, I mean, not now we can't forgive, but I mean, again, it's the story is that you're in a crunch time situation and your team is able to block a punt. And then obviously James Jackson leapt over a center, which is a big no-no in special teams. So again, special teams hurts you. So just being aware of those rules on special teams. So it's all those little details. I mean, you go through the game and you see those details. You see, the turnovers. You see the false starts. You see the drop pass. I mean, there's so many opportunities where you go and you look at the game and you say, Virginia is so close. I mean, that has been, against James Madison, we saw that. Against Maryland, we saw that. Against NC State, we saw that. So at one point, Virginia needs to take advantage of their opportunities to take the next step. The defense played one of its best games against NC State. They gave the Virginia the opportunity. And I mean, Anthony Colandrea gave the opportunity, and Malik Washington too, and Malachi Fields. All these guys gave you the opportunity. The O-line played one of its best games, in my opinion, as well. And although they didn't have a good, they weren't good on the run, they gave Anthony Colandrea plenty of time in a lot of cases. I know there's one sack by Anthony Colandrea that when you look at it, you're going to automatically blame the O-line. Anthony Colandrea did have some options. When you look at it, it looked like he held on the ball just a second too long. Malik Washington was one that looked open. So when you look at that, again, that is Anthony Colandrea as a true freshman rookie learning on the job. Again, he's got explosiveness. He gives you big play opportunities, but he's also learning. He's also learning getting those intermediate, medium range passes. That's something that I feel like that's still something that Anthony Colandrea is learning on the job, is getting comfortable with those progressions and looking into that. Now, again, Anthony Colandrea is a guy that he gets pressure. He is still looking downfield for his receiver. And we've seen that plenty of times, and I've talked about it a lot. But there's still things that he's learning and he's improving. So that is something that, as things get more and more into his career, that's something that you will see improvement in. But right now, that was something that one of the sacks that we saw during the game against NC State. But since I said that this was one of the best defensive performances of the year for this defense, let's start with talking about the defense. I feel like we've focused so much on the offense when we kind of break things down that we don't really talk about this defense. And honestly, kudos to Coach John Rudzinski and this team, because this was honestly their best performance of the year. Like I said, Cam Robinson led the team with 11 tackles, followed by James Jackson at 7. Apart from that special teams play at the end of the game, James Jackson had a strong game. I mean, Brennan Armstrong was pressured quite a lot in this game, and James Jackson was one of those reasons, and he had a tackle in that. Had a sack in that game. So again, he did have good moments. It's just, it's been a little overshadowed by us talking about that special teams play and penalty. Cam Robinson, again, like I said, Dre Walker was one of our breakout players of the year. I think everyone was picking Cam Robinson as a true freshman. So I wanted to be different. So I picked Dre Walker. But, if you looked at all of our preseason prediction, we had Cam Robinson as a guy that would get on the field rather quickly. So it's no surprise to see him as a true freshman starting. And he's such an athletic, rangy linebacker. He has the speed that you want. I mean, he's still trying to understand things and learning the position. Um, he's still trying to understand the college game a bit, the pace of the college game, getting comfortable at will. So, because I think he was more a Mike at high school. So again, getting comfortable with that. So again, he's doing a good job, and he's going to be quite the athlete for Virginia. I think, Tony Elliott called him a program changer. I am writing a feature on Cam Robinson on Thursday, and I asked Elliott about the recruitment. And there was one thing, remember, if you listened to us back then during that recruiting process, we said that Virginia rolled 8 deep with all their coaches staff in there. And Tony Elliott said, it's like, this is a game changer. The Cam Robinson is a guy that you bring in and could, change the momentum of the program. And Cam Robinson, stuck with Virginia after being pursued by some other heavy hitters like Florida State and South Carolina. He turned those guys down, and he came to Virginia because he believed what the staff was trying to accomplish at UVA. So that is why, and this is why Virginia was so adamant that they needed 8 guys going to that basketball game to make sure he signed on early signing day for them, was because of they were thinking that he would contribute early. So, and that's what he's doing. So, I mean, again, Dre Walker, a guy that is very, very confident in his abilities, and is showing why he was also pursued. Tony Elliott actually watched him play in high school. He was one of the few that Elliott was able to watch in person when he went to see a game in North Carolina. He was a pretty quiet guy in his recruitment. His recruitment kind of started getting some noise towards the end of early signing day. There was, Wake Forest watching him, a couple other schools, but he was, again, solid with Virginia. And Virginia recruited him right after camp. He was one of the participants in the first camp of Tony Elliott's career at Virginia, at one of the recruiting camps. And John Radzinski and Kurum Cox saw him and offered him during that visit. And then I think about a month later, or just under a month, he committed to UVA. So he's been pretty strong there. Now, what I liked about this game, so let's look at some of the stats here. So NC State was held to 319 yards total, 180 yards in the air. So they held Brennan Armstrong to 180 yards in the air and 64 yards on the ground. So again, he only averaged 4.3 yards per carry, which is what you want when you're going after Brennan Armstrong. And NC State only had 139 yards rushing. So it was a good day for that defense. And NC State, coming into the game, was one of the most efficient teams on third down, and they went 6 of 14. So again, a good showing for this Virginia defense to allow NC State just 24 points. And I mean, they did their jobs. They gave UVA an opportunity to win. So what I liked about Coach Rudd's game plan for this game was they're like, in order for you to beat Brennan Armstrong, you got to put pressure on him, right? So we need to get him pressure. And they did. They were able to sack him twice. So, and they were also able to get 5 tackles for a loss. So when you look at that, you can see that they were able to pressure him so much better this game. And then on offense, Virginia managed 384 yards total, 271 in the air and 113 on the ground. Obviously, the rushing is something that still needs to get better. I mean, they averaged, after you consider the 2 sacks, they averaged 2.8 yards per carry. That is, you still want to get better. But then Malik Washington, I mean, what a get for Virginia in the portal. He had 10 catches for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged 17 yards per catch. He's only one of 3 receivers to able to record 300-yard games. So again, such a huge win for Virginia in the portal. Him and Malachi Fields have been quite a revelation for this offense. And obviously they've had a good partnership with Anthony Colandrea, who finished the game completing 60% of his passes, 18 of 30 for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns, and obviously 2 interceptions. Like I talked about in the first half of the show, I would give him a leeway on that first interception. Again, that was just a great like tip ball on the pick that went to the other defender. It was just a good play by both defenders for NC State in that regard. So we talked a little bit about Ty Furnish, and I mean, at this point, you're expecting something. I mean, after the Duke game last year, Tony Elliott said that he wanted his team to be accountable, and that because of some of the penalties that hurt, he was going to sit players down if they did consistent penalties. So I'm curious to see what happens after some of the late penalties this week. But also, I'm curious to see when they discuss 4th-and-1 situations. I'm on the fence on about the second one. If you kick a field goal or go for point or go for it on 4th-and-1 and try to, obviously you want to score a touchdown there because at the end, a touchdown would have won you the game. I guess Monday quarterbacking, but I just think that first 4th-and-1, if you're gonna go stay in the shotgun, I'm not a fan of that, and I get it that some coaches and want to stick to your scheme, and it's been something that's not just Virginia. I mean, this is something that you've seen a lot in college football is that they will stay in the shotgun. I just feel like if you got 1 yard, you want to stay under center, or, go for QB sneak. But I also, what Des Kitchings and Tony Elliott says, they didn't want to put too much in a true freshman quarterback. And we've seen issues with a QB sneak where they fumble the ball and then you turn over it. So I get it, I really do. But at the same time, when it wasn't even 4th-and-1. I think it was 4th-and-inches. So in that regard, it still irks me. So, but again, I understand their thought process. I just, Virginia's not doing well in short field situations right now. Like I said, in the first half of the show, when I was mentioning Anthony Colandrea was, a guy that makes you the big plays. Virginia right now just doesn't move the ball as much with short yard gains. So that's something that you want to see more of Virginia moving forward. That just keeps the ball in their possession as well, which helps, the defense not be as gassed as well, especially with so many injuries on that side of the ball. And again, like I said, the second 4th-and-1, like at that point, you want to take the points because you've been in that position and you want to give something to your team so that they can, instead of going for it and not getting it, because you've seen the story and the script before where you don't get it and then your team still is behind. I mean, NC State did score it after that, but at the same time, you have something to hold on to, or mentally, if you're the team, you scored 3 points. So I get that. I'm always curious about what the analytics say about, because some coaches really are into analytics and they'll look into it like this is a percent chance that you go on 4-for-1 at this situation, and if you go in this situation. But so again, I get it on that one too. I still think you go under center or QB sneak for that 4th-1 at midfield. I mean, or to be fair, you can always. Daniel Sparks is, one of the best punters. Just have him, and you still play that field position game, kind of that what they were doing with NC State. But again, that's thinking back. At the end, yeah, you have those little bit of 4-for-1 issues, but at the end of the day, Virginia did have the opportunity to win this game. They just couldn't hold on. And again, I didn't feel like NC State won this game. I felt like Virginia lost this game. It wasn't like I felt like after Maryland, yes, they had a couple opportunities here and there, but it didn't feel like UVA really lost that game. It felt like Maryland won that game in that second half. But in this game, it still feels like UVA lost the game, and rather than NC State won it. I didn't think the best team won that game. So yeah, so that's our quick game recap. Again, like I said in the beginning of the show, we're going to do a Behind Enemy Lines look with AJ Black, who's our publisher for the Boston College site on 24/7. He'll be joining us on the show on Thursday so that he can break down Boston College, what's the expectations around that team, who to watch out for, any injuries concern. I saw, just before I started recording this show, that Alex Washington, a transfer corner that they got from the portal, just put his name back in the portal. Well, I guess he's a grad transfer, so he's putting his name back in the portal. So that was an interesting situation. Virginia actually offered Alex Washington the last time he was in the portal in the winter. So it's a name that Virginia is very familiar with. So his name is back in the portal. So Boston College is dealing with its own issues. Right now, Boston College has not won against a Power 5 team. So they played really close with Florida State, which raised a few eyebrows, but then Louisville took care of business against them the week after. So AJ will be on the show to break down Boston College as Virginia looks to win their first game since beating Georgia Tech on the road in Atlanta last year. So they're hoping to end that 7-game losing streak against Boston College. So we'll be right back here on Thursday to break down that. And we might have some recruiting news as well. I'm looking to get some new boards for the new reset board for 2024, and also look ahead to some of the 2025 names to watch for, because Virginia has been hosting a few players. They'll host more against William and Mary, and in about a month's time, they'll be hosting official visitors. So we'll get all that look ahead as we continue our coverage on Wahoo's 24/7. So for today, hope you guys have a great rest of your week.